All right. I guess that thing's not working, so we'll just go the old school way. You know, I actually had the full compilation of the goat singing that George shared in his keynote this morning, so I couldn't really do that. So a buddy sent me this one. So I'm Josh Stumpenhorst, and I thank you for being here on the lunch hour. Most of you may just found a nice spot that you can hopefully take a nap for the next 45 minutes. And we're going to talk about connected educators. Just a real brief, I'm a teacher. I'm a 6th grade language arts and history teacher in Naperville. Anybody from the Naperville area other than my coworker? You always have to ask that question because if you're going to say something bad about where you work, you got to make sure you know who's in the room. So let's get started. A lot of people ask me this question, how do we get connected? Okay? And I often tell them that's actually the worst question you can ever ask. The question you need to be asking is why? And at a tech conference, I often make fun of the tech conferences because everybody wants to know how I can get more, and you fill in the blank, right? How can I get more iPads? How can I get interactive whiteboards, which are not interactive? How can I get these things in my classroom? We don't ever ask the question, why? And so what I'm hoping to do is spend some time sharing how and why I have been connected, what it's done for me, but also more importantly, what it's done for the students in my class and in my school. So the first reason, and this may never happen to you, but on a Sunday night, you're doing your lesson plans, right? Those of us that actually still do lesson plans. And you have no idea what you're doing, so you go to the Google and you type in something like this. You're looking for lesson plans on the Roman Republic, and you have no idea, so you go to Google and you type this in. Has anybody ever done this? If your hand's not up, you're lying. Okay, so we do these things because we're looking for answers, because clearly Google is going to be our savior, and the first 5 things at the top of the search, that's probably a good lesson, right? And then you pull it, you find, okay, we got some copies, I'll run this, and we're ready for Monday, okay? And how many of you have ever found lessons that were complete garbage going through this route? And I'm always kind of fascinated by and I forget the website, is it like Teachers Paying Teachers or something, where teachers put their stuff and other teachers can buy it? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Why would you buy something that's freely available all the time? There are books being written and stamped with Common Core ready all over it. Publishers are making money off of that. Guess what? There's already stuff out there that people are doing that they're sharing for free, okay? So the first reason, and I often try to hook people in using social media and connecting, is to find resources. It's really that simple. My gateway into this was finding social studies lessons. And that's where it started for me. Because I got tired of doing this on Sunday nights and getting back mostly a bunch of garbage. The next reason I want to chat just real briefly about is a very good friend of mine whose name is Rob. Rob teaches right next door to me, and we carpool, which means we talk about all kinds of stuff, both school-related and very unschool-related things. And we often talk about this echo chamber, and you probably have experienced this in your building, and I'm a product of it too. How many of you, when you go to your faculty room, your faculty meeting, it's not that there's assigned seating, but there is assigned seating, right? Those people sit over there. I sit over here. When you walk in and that new teacher sitting in your seat, you kind of look at them for a minute. Let's go. You can't sit there. And you know when the principal says something new that's coming out, you can almost look around the room and say, I know how he's going to react to it. I know how she's going to react to it. Well, she never likes doing anything new, so she's going to hate it and find 10 things wrong with it. How many of you experience this? Okay? I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing. It's the reality. All right? I am very fortunate because I work with some fantastic teachers that are providing me with new content and new ways of doing things. How many of you don't feel you work in that environment? How many feel like you have ever felt stagnant where you are? And you're afraid to raise your hand because your coworker is sitting next to you. And so that might happen. And a lot of times we become very good friends with the people we work with, right? I mean, a lot of the guys I work with, we play poker together, we go out, we do things. And the same mentality, anybody English teachers in the room? Teaching language arts or English? Have you ever done peer revision with kids? Isn't it a transforming experience? Your paper was good, I liked it. You're good, I like you. And that's the extent of the peer revision in some cases, because they're friends, they don't want to hurt their feelings. Well, teachers are the same way. If you invite a teacher to come and watch you teach, and we did that in our building for a couple of years, it was a really neat experience to see somebody else teach. But are you ever going to criticize a coworker that teaches next door to you? That's a tough thing to do. I'm not saying that you're doing it out of malice, but you're doing it to hopefully help them improve what they're doing. And sometimes that's tough for us to do. And so we get into this echo chamber. My buddy Rob, you're doing awesome, man. Keep going. Are we getting any better by doing that? And so I often encourage teachers to go out and find some other things that are happening, and also to put yourself out there. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. And then the other thing is, this is kind of comes from a story, and I'm careful with a coworker in the room. I had a student come to me, it was his last year or the year before, and this boy was clearly upset. Comes into my study hall, which is the end of the day, just real fired up. God, I hate that teacher. Not using names here, we're very close to home. And how many of you ever had a student come and complain about another teacher or the principal or whatever? Okay, it happens. And we do the teacher thing, you know, zip it, we're not having that conversation in here, save it for your mom, whatever. Okay, we can't be doing that. I don't know what kind of mood I was in. I said, well, why do you hate her? And every time I tell the story, it's a him or her, just so we're clear. I keep that moving, okay? And the student proceeded to tell me why they were very frustrated with the way this teacher was teaching. They weren't using technology, all we do is packets, and all this kind of really dull and dreary environment he was painting for me. And I've never seen this teacher teach, so I had no idea. I was just kind of, having this conversation with him. And I said, well, why do you think they teach that way? Well, obviously they're a bad teacher, I already told you that. I said, hey, you think they're teaching that way because they don't know any other way to teach? Now, the mind of a 12-year-old, this is like, what are you speaking to me? And so we had this conversation. I said, most teachers teach the way they were taught. If you're never shown another way of doing something, are you ever going to do it a different way? If you've never seen pizza without cheese on it, are you ever going to have it with... No, we don't operate that way. You have to be exposed. So this whole idea of I don't know any other way to do this. And there are a lot of teachers, and I will be the first to admit very early on in my career, I used to give those teachers, oh, that teacher's terrible, they never do anything new. But was anybody ever showing them anything new? You guys are very lucky to be here, not because of me, but because you're at a conference where you're hopefully getting exposed to something new. That's the idea. Most teachers teach the way they were taught, and in some cases the way their parents and their grandparents were taught. And so by being connected, you're exposing yourself to new ideas. I am firmly convinced there are people out there doing what I do better than me. If you don't have that mentality, then I'm going to tell you very clearly you're wrong. There are people out there doing your job better than you. Some people take that as an insult. I take that as a compliment that I can learn from them. And that's the attitude we kind of have to have when we talk about these things. And then somebody says, well, how does being on Twitter and all these things actually impact kids, right? Because we're about kids. Well, at least we should be. How many of you are classroom teachers? In a classroom with children that may or may not smell occasionally. How many of you are administrators? Okay. I don't know why administrators always sit in the back every time. It's interesting. Okay. So I'm going to share a quick story about how Twitter really impacted my students a couple of years ago. No, it was last year. I had become quite active on Twitter, and to the point where my wife said, keep your phone off of the dinner table. And I was at a conference in Philadelphia, and who knows who this is? I'll be honest with you, I've done this slide 100 times, and I've only ever had 2, so I have 2. Nobody more than 2? Do you teach science? Oh, you know who it is. Okay. This is Reed Timmer. And still half of you are going, I don't really care. Who is this guy? He is a meteorologist. He works for Discovery Channel, Discovery Education. And he had a show called Storm Chasers. And now he's doing some kind of independent stuff. And he spoke at the conference very passionately about how much he loved science. And when he was a kid, he told all these great stories about, stealing his parents, VCR recording, a VHS recorder to go out in the yard and tape, hail and all this crazy stuff. And I was just, it's kind of neat to listen to somebody talk about things they're passionate about, even if you don't care about science. It was kind of invigorating to listen to him. And so when we were done, whatever, the next school year starts. This was last fall. I have this young man in my class, and we're just kind of talking, that getting to know each other phase at the beginning of the year. And then I'm talking to this young man, and he clearly has an obsession with weather, specifically tornadoes and how they work. And he was using words I thought were swear words, but they currently are the way you rate tornadoes, okay? Those of you get that. I didn't at the time, okay? So I just said to this kid, I go, have you ever heard of Reed Timmer? And he kind of took a step back. Are you messing with me? I go, no, why would I be messing with you? I don't even barely know you. He goes, I love Reed Timmer. I mean, this was like his idol. It would have been me back in junior high if somebody said they had met Michael Jordan, okay? And I said, well, I got to see him speak. And he's like, whoa, that's awesome. And I sent him a tweet, and he tweeted me back. So we're like best friends now. That's kind of how it works. And this kid was just beside himself. So I said, you know what, let me see, let's just try to put my money where my mouth is and see if this connected thing actually matters. And so I sent this tweet out. I have a student, that little S, big S is code in the Twitter world, who's a huge fan of meteorology. I wonder if I can get Reed Timmer to Skype with him for just a short interview. And I'll be honest, I would have been perfectly content if Reed would have just tweeted back with his catchphrase, keep chasing. And I would have shared that with the kid, and this kid's day would have been made. Would have been awesome. Well, social media was a funny thing, okay? My director of technology and his boss happened to know each other, saw the tweet. About 2 days later, I'm on the phone with one of the vice presidents on Discovery Channel. And I'm like, hello? Yeah, we want to have Reed come to your school. We got to do this. Come again? What? I just wanted a Skype interview. He doesn't need to come to Naperville, Illinois. Like, oh, no, we love Naperville, because one of his bosses knew sons, one of those 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon type of things. And so a couple weeks later, I'm sitting with these Discovery Channel, VPs and execs in my conference room planning Reed Timmer coming to our school. All because of a silly tweet. And I'll never forget when I told this kid. I thought we were going to have the AED come out of the case because he was beside himself, excited. And the email I got from his mom after, because what he did is he came to our school, and something I'll talk about a little bit later is we do this thing called Innovation Day in our 6th grade. And he came and did a keynote to kick off the day, talking about his passion for science. And then did a little meet and greet and got to meet this young man. And that picture that he has, I know, is proudly displayed in this young man's home today. And it was all because of me being connected. Not because of me, but just because I put that out there and I made that connection, or tried to make that connection. If you're a language arts teacher, there are tons of authors that are out there that are willing to Skype and chat with classes, okay? When we talk about author's purpose, let's talk to the author. I'm in the middle of emailing back and forth with, Wendelin Van Dranen, I don't know if that's how you say her name, she wrote Flipped. I've been tweeting and emailing her back and forth to set up a Skype visit, hopefully in the next month with my students. Doesn't take very much, it's pretty simple, okay? And I know some of one of the real popular, that Origami Yoda series. Some of you are looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's a book with pictures. And it is, the author of that series is very good about meeting with classes, and most of them do it without any charge, which is fantastic. So this can help your students, for sure, and then the other reason that I really push, and this kind of gets people a little uncomfortable, if you ever go to Google and just type in teacher, this I just typed in the other day, this was actually Wednesday morning, or I don't even remember when it was one day this week. You type in teacher into Google, and the first hit you get is the Wikipedia, and the second one that you get is news. How many of you are comfortable with that being the message that's out there about teachers? And that's the story that's being told about our profession. How many of you can remember a story of a teacher doing something inappropriate and it was on the news or in the paper? How many of you know those stories? Okay, but if I would ask the same question about a positive story, is it a lot harder to come up with? I actually get really aggravated with the mass media. They were here a couple of years ago, and they had anchors from NBC, CBS, the whole, Fox News, or Fox was even here. And they were up here talking, they had these anchors about how, we love good, feel-good stories about education. Bull. They don't. Because I hounded every one of their networks about stuff going on in my school, not just in my classroom. And one of them got back to me and said, oh, we'll look into it. So the mass media is generally not interested, okay, in what's going on in our classrooms. It doesn't sell. It's not sexy. That apparently is, okay? So why then does that have to do with us? Well, because using these tools, becoming connected, you control the story that is out there. If you're blogging, you control the message that is going out there, okay? And I'll use another quick thing that kind of came into my lap this week. I got a call from a friend who's in the Department of Ed in Minnesota. And I don't know if anybody has followed this. Why would you? I don't know. There was a high school student that was suspended for a tweet. Does anybody know this story? No. Okay. So this high school student, all-star, jock, athlete. This was important. Because if he wasn't, I don't think the story would have made it where it did. There were some kids tweeting, kind of joking with him. Hey, did you really kiss that teacher? Joking. Okay? So he tweeted back. I don't even remember the exact words he used. It was only 2 words, like absolutely yes, or of course yes, something like that. That's all he tweeted. Now, how many of you have ever heard a student say something silly about a teacher or something? Okay, we get it. That kid was suspended 5 days, and then 10 days it has now been 2 months suspended and will be moved to another school just because of that. Okay? And you think about the story that's being told. And so I was brought in on a radio show, which is always kind of funny. And they wanted to know, well, why would you encourage social media use for teachers when all this bad stuff is going on? Okay? Well, then I always ask the question, what did that school do to prepare their students for using these tools? How many of you have a class in your school about digital media or digital citizenship or using social media? Yeah, I got a couple of hands, most of them going like this. Because we don't. And then we get mad when students make mistakes in these spaces. They're going to. How many of you have ever done this? You have a parent conference and you make a comment about their son or their daughter's Facebook page or Instagram feed and they go, they're not on that. I actually had a parent, the group of kids had started a bullying page, a page hating on another student. It was horrible. And several of the parents we talked to about it, this was several years ago, well, my daughter's not on Facebook. And you rotate the screen around and show them. So parents are unaware as well. And it's not I'm not saying it's their fault, they should be involved. So social media allows us to tell our stories because if we're in those spaces, we can help guide our students and hopefully give them a chance of success and not getting down that road. So let's talk about how do we get connected. Now we're going to enter into the audience participation portion of the session. So if you're uncomfortable with that, now's the time to pretend you need to go to the bathroom or pull out the phone and pretend somebody called you and walk. That's what I would do. So the first thing I'm going to throw up on the screen is blogging. That sounded kind of bad, throwing up. I want you to think about which of these 4 descriptors describes you personally. As I walk in front of it. Okay, everybody kind of think of where they are. This room's not really set up. Normally I'd have you stand up. We'd go to 4 corners like we do with our kids. But I'm not going to treat you like kids because most of you, the food coma's setting in and you just need to sit. Is there anybody in the room that honestly does not know what blogging is? Okay, good. That's all right. A couple of years ago, I had some, what are you talking about? How many of you consider yourself avid readers? You read a lot, but you're not blogging yourself. You're just a consumer. Okay, does anybody want to share why they're not writing but just reading? And this is where the crickets come in. Yes. Time. How many of you, that's your reason you don't blog? You don't have the time. Okay, anybody else have a reason? I don't think anyone would read it. I could have paid both of you because those are the 2 number 1 reasons that I will address later in the session. Those are horrible reasons. I don't mean to be mean to you. Those are horrible reasons, okay? Some people say, I don't have time. We make time for things that are important to us, okay? And it doesn't take that much time. Well, I got to write a blog, okay? I got to proofread. It's got to be perfect. Trust me, it doesn't. You should see some of the garbage. No, you do not need perfection. There are no rules. That's the beauty of it. Most of my blogs are written on my drive to school. I'm not texting and driving. I use the Dragon on my phone, and I just dictate as I'm driving to school. When I get to school, I have a blog post written. I edit it, I post it. Okay, it's very simple. How many of you are you have a blog, but you really don't use it? You're not posting it? Okay, how many of you are like all-stars? You're blogging, your kids are blogging. Do you want to share? I'm going to pick on you. Why are you doing it? We can all leave now. Okay. That's perfect. If you're going to, and I think George said it this morning very well, if you're going to ask kids to do these things and be in these spaces, we have to be there with them. We have to model for them. Okay. I always liked that was it a Volkswagen? I think it was a VW commercial with the dad teaching his son how to throw the baseball in the yard. You guys know which one I'm talking about? And it's horrible. But that's the model that kid has. Okay. Thankfully, my sons have coaches for swimming because I flunked swim lessons. But the point is we have to model for these kids. And when we start talking about blogging is and can be scary. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you're putting yourself out there, right? You're putting your ideas, your work. I mean, she said to share excellent lessons. Guess what? Some of my lessons are bad. And those are okay to share too. Why would I ever want to share something that's bad? The feedback you get. So then why blog? Well, I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to talk about a couple of real quick examples. The first one I'm going to gear you towards is this woman by the name of Pernille Rip. And her name's there, and her Twitter is just @PernilleRip. And I share Pernille. How many of you read Pernille's blog already? Am I right? I haven't said anything yet, but I will. Okay. So Pernille is a fifth, she's a late elementary school teacher. She's a mom. She's a wife. She shares passionately about what she's doing in her class. And sometimes it doesn't go well. And she talks about it. She blogs about her failures and her successes. And she gets feedback in the comments. I still remember my first blog post I wrote after the ISTE conference. And I'm fairly confident that my mom and myself are the only two people that read it. You know, and that's okay, all right? And she's just a fantastic example, and I encourage you to go look and see how she's using this space, okay? I was trying to bring up mine earlier. The sharing of student work through a blog is a fantastic avenue, all right? I often ask groups, how are you sharing student work? How many of you would say you have work of your students hanging up in the classroom somewhere? Some of you? None of you are sharing student work? I'm sorry, I'm distracting you from Facebooking. How many of you are sharing student work somewhere in the hallways, in the front of the building, like around your building? How many of you have student work shared outside of your building? How many of you, if I went online, could find work your students are doing right now? That's good. Every year the more hands go up, okay? We are past the time and day and age when the refrigerator is the sole recipient of student work. We have to move past that. Okay, I have small children. I have a kindergartner and a first grader. No, he's in second grade. He's in second grade. Sorry, I was up all night. My kindergartner had a first concussion yesterday. Fell off a lunchroom bench, CT scan. It was a lot of fun. My oldest goes, why are we scanning the cat? The cat ran away a month ago. And when you Google your name, anybody ever Googled their name? And is there anything more depressing than no results found? Okay, when you Google my son's names, I want their work to show up. I want what they're doing, what they're creating, what they're building. In the same way that I do. You Google my name, you will see my body of work. Okay? Why do we not want that for our kids? Why are we not modeling that? We have to. Okay? And a blog is a great place to start. And I would encourage all of you. I came to a session at last year, and they were talking about Kid Blog, and my coworker Rob, who was with me, he jumped on it right away. How many of you are using Kid Blog? Okay, I don't care if you don't teach language arts, get on this, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, this is a fantastic, safe environment for kids to share their work. And everybody's like, well, what's the big deal with blogging? All right, I'll tell you this. How many of you have students present their work in your class? Like stand up front, present your work. And you ask them, well, what's your audience? Who's your audience and your purpose? We're really, very serious about that. It's probably a Common Core standard in there somewhere. And the kids are always going to answer, well, my audience is the class and my purpose is a grade. If the answer to those questions, if that's your answer, we're doing it for the wrong reason. Most kids will present and not give a darn what their classmates think because they're going back to that was a really good presentation you had, I liked it. You want to sit by lunch? No, it's not. They're not caring what their peers think. You take that work and you say, I'm going to put it on the class YouTube channel or on your kid blog and it's going to be shared out through the world. Just watch what happens to the quality of work. I have a kid who is an absolutely atrocious writer. Every time he turned something into me, it would be one sentence, and to call it a sentence would have been very forgiving of me. We started blogging in my class this year. I can't get him to stop writing. And I'll never forget when he came in, he goes, somebody actually commented on my blog. Like, yeah, that happens. It does. He's from Hungary. Like, that's an actual place. I went and looked at it on the map. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm your social studies teacher. You don't know where Hungary is? We got a whole other issue here. And it connects kids with the world, and it connects their work with the world, and provides them an authentic audience. Because I hate to tell you, but your classroom is not an authentic audience. It's not, okay? And then we're going to talk about another one here. Let's talk about YouTube. Have you guys heard it? It's going to be huge, okay? So pick which of these do you kind of feel is where you think you are. I promise you, if you come to my afternoon session, I have a cat video. Okay, how many of you would fall into the cat video category? And what I mean by that is you think YouTube is pretty useless in terms of a teaching resource. Is there anybody that feels that way? You're afraid to raise your hand in this session. No, and that's good. How many of you feel that it's a teaching tool? You use it for resources. I mean, as a history teacher, the History Channel has some fantastic content on there. Okay? How many of you are actively using it to post work of students and of yourselves? Very few. Okay? Very few. When you think about a lot of the work that we're doing in the digital age, a lot of it can't be magneted onto a refrigerator physically. A kid does an awesome stop motion film. Where's that shared? When you think about it, how much student work, you take a piece of work a student does, how many people will actually see that piece of work? In most classrooms, the teacher. And if you don't have time to share it and they're just turned into some sort of digital Dropbox, I'm the only one that sees it, maybe themselves, because hopefully they watched it, and they may have shared with a couple of their buddies and then their parents. So you're talking less than 10 people are ever going to see a piece of student work that they do in your class. I don't find that acceptable. I think we have to open that up. And there's something pretty powerful about the first time you put a kid's piece of work on YouTube, and they'll come in the next day, hey, how many views we got? I said, we're up to like 90 views on your video. I know, I refreshed like 88 times last night. It was awesome. And it's pretty powerful. And again, this goes back to this whole quality of work. I have students, we're going to present. Can you videotape, put it on YouTube? And my answer is always the same, if it's good enough. And they kind of look at me. What do you mean if it's good enough? I said, if I'm going to put your work out there for the world to see, it better be good. And you talk about the change in quality of work. Oh, I just got to get this stupid thing done so Mr. Stumpenhorst can grade it and we can move on. I got to get this thing done because it's going to go on the class YouTube channel and who knows who's going to see it. Changes everything. Okay? Changes everything. How many of you are fearful of sharing student work online because you feel like you can't or aren't allowed to? Okay? Realistic fear. Okay? Have you ever been told not to? Anybody ever been told not to? The district comes in, the man comes in and says, you can't do that. Anybody ever had that? Okay, so here's one thing that I did. My district is very open about that and it has become more open in later years, is I have a piece of paper that goes home the first day of school to every kid. And it says everything you do in this class will be tweeted, YouTubed, blogged, and every other social media site turned into a verb. And the parents sign off on it. And in the 4 years that I've done this, I have had less than 5 parents ever deny that. Okay? And there are very creative ways to get around it. I was talking to a teacher in Florida, and they get a lot of illegal immigration kind of concerns in their state. Illinois, nobody's coming here. Nobody wants to be here, right? It's the second state in the country right now, people leaving. You know that? We're behind Jersey. That's where we're at right now. And what she was doing with her kids that were illegal immigrants is when she would do post pictures and whatnot, she would do the blur face or like get a smiley face photoshopped right over the top so that they're still sharing the work. Even if you don't have the student's picture, does that kid still know it's them? Are they still emailing that to their aunt and their grandmas? And they are, okay? And they're still having the work out there and shared in a very digital space. Another way that YouTube is being used really well, and I'm a very big not fan of the flipped classroom. I don't agree with outsourcing learning. However, fantastic example. This is a teacher up in Michigan, and he's clearly a science teacher because I don't understand some of the words even on the screen. But what he does is when he does a lab, he videotapes it and puts it on his YouTube channel. How many of you ever have kids don't show up to school? It happens periodically, okay? Or this may never happen to you, but it happens sometimes to me. The kid that's actually physically in your school and in your desk, but not so much mentally. Not paying attention, completely doesn't listen to a single thing you've said for 43 minutes. And when I say, well, or they're out, well, did I miss anything important yesterday? No, we just hung out. You're good, okay? So in my social studies class, when I do reviews, I'll do like a 10 to 12 minute review of our notes because we do a lot of Cornell notes and things like that in our class. I'll screen capture my notes, throw it on the school YouTube channel. Oh, you were out? Here you go. There's the link. We got a test coming up. I emailed a link to all the parents, so they have it. It's just a great resource, okay? So not only sharing student work, but also you sharing. And then another one that I didn't do like a blue box for was Instagram, and I'm very intrigued by where I'm seeing some teachers, and in this case a principal, use this. How many of you are parents in the room? How many of you have absolutely no idea what your child does in school? unless the nurse calls or the teacher calls, which happens to me quite frequently. And is it frustrating? As a parent, it's frustrating. I'll be honest, what did you do today? Because even in the kindergarten and second grader that I have, what did you do today? Stuff or nothing. How was school? Fine. I mean, I'm getting these one-word responses. And so this guy, Tim, up in Portland, he has an Instagram feed that he is sending out pictures and short video of his school every day, or nearly every day. He's walking the halls. This is what's going on in Mrs. Johnson's room. Takes a picture and shares that story. That's a pretty powerful connection you can make with your community, all right? And parents want to know what's going on. And the older the kids get, I feel like the less involved parents are, but it's also the less involved teachers allow them to be. And that's not a technology thing. You know, you think about when kids are in kindergarten or even in preschool, their parents are in there all the time. I was in my son's preschool class all the time. And then by the time they get to junior high and high school, you're hoping that you only see the parents twice a year, right? Spring conferences and fall conferences, and that's about it, okay? So Instagram has become quite powerful, and one of the things that I've been really trying to do and thinking about is creating a class Instagram. Why wouldn't you do that? Take pictures, share it out, okay? I'm using Twitter right now for that, but certainly Instagram would be a good way to go. So let's talk about the big monkey in the room here, Twitter. Okay, so how many of you are not on or not actively using? Sounds like a drug abuse class now, okay? So how many of you are considered, you have an account but you're not super active? Like you have it, you know, you dabble, you see what, you know, Kardashians are up to, okay? How many of you really feel like you couldn't do your job without it? I mean, I could do my job without it, but I don't think I'd be as good at it. Okay, does anybody want to share why they feel that way? Because I can share my perspective because I'm going to, because I'm up here, but let's hear from somebody else. I'm going to pick on you. Your hand was up. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. You know, I'm going to tell you a secret. Don't tell your districts this because they paid for you to come here and you're not at school with your kids today. You didn't have to be here and you would get all the content without ever setting foot at Pheasant Run. You guys know that? You'd follow the hashtag, and some of you are going, what is this hashtag he speaks of? Okay, we'll get to that. So Twitter is one of those things that has allowed me to connect with things and people and ideas in a way that I never could. Okay, and I was at this conference three or 4 years ago, and a fantastic guy, John Orrick, was here, and he was doing a session just over in the other room. And I was frankly, my battery was dying on my laptop and I just wanted to find a seat next to an outlet. Ever played that game before? I don't care what the guy's talking about. I'm just going to go sit in the back and shut up and plug in. So I went in the back of John's session and plugged in. Tried to ignore him, get some work done. And he was talking about Twitter. And he kept railing, this is like the best tool for teachers, getting them connected. So many resources and great people out there. And I'm sitting there going, okay, whatever. Didn't think much of it. Next month, I was at the ISTE conference, and I was sitting next to this woman, and I totally creeped her out. We were sitting in a session, and it was a workshop, so I was literally sitting next to her. And she had TweetDeck up, and if you don't know what that is, it's not a dirty word. It's a thing in Twitter. And I'm watching her, and this woman was sharing resources, and she's like typing in the resources and sending this off to this Neverland, and I kind of go, what are you doing? And I think I kind of creeped her out because I was literally sitting like this looking at her screen. And she goes, well, this is Twitter. I go, no, it's not. What do you mean? She goes, well, this is, and she explained to me how every time a resource was shared in a session, she would send it out. And I go, well, where's it going? She goes, well, it's going out on Twitter, and anybody that follows me will see that. Oh. And then she started talking about the hashtag, and I thought, okay, so I might give this a try. And then the next year I was at this conference, I saw this guy, Steve Dembo. Anybody know Steve? Fantastic guy. Just top notch. And you can follow him on Twitter if you don't already. And if you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter and then follow him. But Steve works for Discovery. I've mentioned them like several times. They should be cutting me a check. But Discovery and Steve is an educator and he's a dad. And for some reason, I connected with him. And he connected with me, and it kind of pulled me in. And I started following the people he was following. And people get really kind of overwhelmed. There's too much going on Twitter. Find 2 people. Find 5 people and start there. I mean, there's people that follow tens of thousands of people. Makes my head hurt thinking about that. The trick is there's no right way or wrong way to do it. Unless you're a politician, there's a lot of wrong ways you could be using Twitter. But as a teacher, use it for what you need, okay? Get what you need out of it. Another great way that I see Twitter being used is by schools now. And I know Jason Marquis, anybody here from his school? You are? You are from the school, okay. The Light and Pride hashtag that they have started is fantastic. There are teachers and students sharing the amazing work that's going on in their school with the community and the world at large. Talk about telling your story, connecting your school and your students to the world. We always talk about this real world. The kids are already in it, guys. We're the only thing that's not real about their world in most cases. They go out in the real world and they come to us, and we're not the real world. We tell them to shut off their devices, unplug, sit in nice, neat rows, and listen for hours on time every single day. Is that the real world? As you're all sitting in rows, that's kind of awkward. Okay. So I want to just for those of you that are kind of unaware of what this is, this whole notion of a hashtag, and this is where I tell everybody to start. Even if you're not on Twitter, just go to twitter.com/search. And I can never know if what's a forward and a backslash, so if one doesn't work, go the other way, okay? And when you go to there, type in the #, and if you're a 4th grade teacher, 4th chat, ed chat, ICE 14, any of those hashtags, okay? I don't encourage you when you're watching the Oscars or something like that to open and search that hashtag because your mind will literally explode. But every major group, with the exception of counselors, is anybody a counselor in here? Okay, good, because I got nothing for you. But nearly every group of educators, administrators, CP chat, connected principals, there are people that are posting information, and this is where I found people. I'm a social studies teacher. Who's a social studies teacher in the room? One of you, two, okay. SS Chat's one of the most extensively used hashtags other than EdChat. So you use those hashtags, and there's a guy out there by the name of Jerry Blumengard, Cybraryman1 on Twitter. And he has cataloged the entire internet, I swear. You talk to Jerry about Portillo's. I got a page for that. You talk about lawn furniture. He's got a page for that. Okay, he's got pages on everything. But he has a page on education hashtags and the weekly chats that occur around them. A lot of these have a weekly chat, and a lot of states are starting. So if you're an Illinois educator, I think it's Monday nights. Anybody going to correct me? Nobody knows, so we're going to go with Monday. Monday nights, they have an hour chat just around Illinois education, things that are impacting our state. And it's ILED chat, okay? And a lot of the states are doing similar things. And so to bring this back to one of you said about, I don't have anything valuable to share. Nothing I'm doing is new. How many of you feel that way, honestly? You're all real happy with yourself. That's good. Okay. Dean Sharesky is an educator up in Canada, and we're not going to hold that against him, but he talks about this whole idea of sharing, the moral imperative to share. If you're doing something in your classroom that could help somebody else somewhere else, you have to share it. You know, I recently was in Scottsdale working with the State Teachers of the Year. So the Teacher of the Year from every state. So it's 53 of them. There's some like Mariana Islands and other places. Don't worry, I know there's 50 states, guys. And I was doing a workshop with them on social media. And so one of the things I did is I creeped on them all, or whatever you want to call it, and Googled them and searched them and kind of did some background checking on all of them. And there was a small percentage of them that had an active social media presence or an active digital presence. Now, I'm going to make the assumption these are all pretty fantastic educators, and they are. And yet, very few of them were actually sharing their work. That's kind of problematic. Think about this. If you had a doctor, and this is what Dean always says, if you had a doctor come up with a cure of cancer, would we as a society tolerate them not sharing that? Would we? No way. I'm better because I learned from a lot of other people. And if those other people aren't sharing, can I get better? I can't. And so I often get this. Well, I'm not doing anything spectacular. None of us are. We're just doing old things and calling it something new. It's really what teaching is all about, stealing from somebody else. And so I share this little clip to hopefully, I think it says it better than I can. or it's not going to say it at all. And there's no goats or
Any creator of anything knows this feeling. You experience someone else's innovative work. It's beautiful, brilliant, breathtaking. You're stunned. Their ideas are unexpected and surprising, but perfect. You think, I never would have thought about that. How did they even come up with that? It's genius. Afterwards, you think, my ideas are so obvious. I'll never be as inventive as that. I get this feeling often. Amazing books, music, movies, or even amazing conversations. I'm in awe at how the creator thinks like that. I'm humbled. But I continue to do my work. I tell my little tales. I share my point of view. Nothing spectacular, just my ordinary thoughts. So one day someone emailed me and said, I never would have thought about that. How did you even come up with that? It's genius. Of course I disagreed and I explained why it was nothing special. But afterwards, I realized something surprisingly profound. Everybody's ideas seem obvious to them. I'll bet even John Coltrane or Richard Feynman felt that everything they were playing or saying was pretty obvious. So maybe what's obvious to me is amazing to someone else. Hit songwriters in interviews often admit that their most successful hit song was one they just thought was stupid and not even worth recording. We're clearly a bad judge of our own creations. We should just put it out and let the world decide. Are you holding back something that seems too obvious to share?
Okay, and I think that really hit home with me the first time I saw that, because there are things that I do in my class and I've seen other teachers do, and we just kind of take it for granted. You know, and there are people that are on every stage of this evolution of teaching. And I look back at where I was my first couple of years, and I want to apologize to every child that I taught those first couple of years, okay? Because I've grown, and I know that, but it's because I'm continually learning and learning from other people, and people have been willing to share their genius with me. So I feel an obligation to share my genius or idiocy, whichever way you want to take it, with anybody that's willing to listen, all right? And then I often get the question, well, where do I start? And I've been to plenty of sessions where they have the kind of this mentality, join or die. And they will shame you into using Twitter. They will shame you into blogging. Does that ever work with kids? No, it doesn't. They'll do it just enough to get by and then they move on. And so when I think about where to start, I often just tell people, find one thing. If it's Twitter, if it's a blog, find one thing to get your work out there. And understand that there are going to be people that are going to pat you on the back and say everything you're doing is awesome. And then there's going to be people that say you are a complete idiot. And guess what? The one who calls you an idiot, you're going to learn more from. I promise you that, because I've been called idiot plenty of times. And I say, well, why do you say that? And then it starts a conversation. And through those conversations, you're going to reaffirm your beliefs about something, or you're going to change your thinking about something. And trust me, I've been challenged on a lot of the things that I thought I believed, and it's constantly evolving. And I always say, if you're teaching the first year the same as your 30th year, you're failing. You are. And there's a few teachers that are doing that, and we need to help them, expose them to new ideas. And so I just leave you with this, just start. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. We all make these New Year's resolutions of going running and working out, and then by about this time of year we're done, because frankly we're sick and tired of running in 20 below zero wind chills, okay? And you have to dedicate yourself and make time. And the last thing I will share with you is a small aside about myself, is my wife and I were kind of runners. I would say we were pseudo-runners, meaning we'd run a 5K now and then. And she would do a holiday run streak. Anybody heard of this? It involves clothing, so anytime you say streak, running, people get a little upset. You have to run a single, every day, at least a mile from Thanksgiving to the New Year. And I always like to show up my wife. She loves that about me. And I said, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. And today was day 779, and I have not missed a single day. And so my advice to you is, there are no excuses. Just do it. And if I can help you, connect with me, and I will help you connect. So thank you very much.